Have you thought about starting your own windshield repair business, but had a ton of questions racing through your head? Like, is it profitable? Well, what about this? Should I do it this way? Well, what about that? Well, recently, I had the privilege to sit down with a couple of windshield repair technicians from all over the United States, and we did a Q&A, and they answered a ton of questions. So stay connected and keep listening, and you can hear it from those technicians themselves. Hey, it's Corey with Delta Kits, and today we got Zach on the line, and he's going to help us out with answering some questions in regards to getting a tent location and doing windshield repairs. So Zach, we really appreciate your time, and we're going to be mindful of that. So let's jump right in. And let me ask, how long have you been in the windshield repair industry?
Technically, I've been working in the repair industry since 2012.
2012, that's what's up. And before doing this, did you have any experience as a repair technician, or were you just new to everything?
No, I actually ended up working for another company that year, and kind of that's how I learned everything about the industry within a summer of working for them.
Cool. Well, that's what's up. So now you're doing a tent location. And how did you figure out that the tent location was the best business model for you?
I was actually working for another company that does tents,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm up in Canada, and they do the same thing. So I actually kind of got inspired from them and just seeing how well they worked and how convenient they were and how much exposure they brought, and just overall seemed like a good business model to get into.
Got you. And where do you actually set your tent up at? Or is it like a mall parking lot, a car wash, lube shop, or where?
Yeah, typically I'm looking for something that's like a busy parking lot with a lot of people going in and out, whether it's a shopping mall or grocery store, or something that's going to have a lot more traffic going through it. And then you also kind of want an intersection that has lights that if people are stopping and going and whatnot, at least it gives them a few seconds to look over and kind of see your big bright tent there. So that helps as well.
Got you. And how do you qualify a good location?
Yeah, you know what? It kind of depends on the area, but I would say it's all about the traffic that's going in and out around your tent, whether people are parking beside your tent or a few stalls away, or if there's a busy gas station near your tent, something like that. So you need a lot of traffic. So the less traffic you have, the more you're relying on people driving by, and not a bad thing, but you definitely want people around your actual location. I find that's the best way to kind of bring people in and out of your spot.
Gotcha. And when you figuring out a location, do you count the cars that pass by, or how do you determine how many cars coming by is a good location for you?
A lot of it had to do with just knowing the areas. So
Okay.
a lot of it was, just kind of either knowing that it's a busy street or knowing that it's a busy mall, or either, spending a few hours there and kind of seeing how much traffic is stopping by. I would say a lot of our locations, we kind of knew ahead of time that they would already be a busy spot because you would see a lot of retail stores already there and people going in and out. So that was usually a good indicator of this could be a possible good location for us.
Got it. And once you figured out the right location, so we figured that out, how do you identify the right person to talk to about renting or leasing a location?
So this is the fun part of getting a location down. So once you found your location and you think it's going to be busy and looks like there's a good spot for your tent and all that, the next thing to do is to try to talk to whoever is either a manager or either a cashier or somebody that would know who's in charge of the land. So sometimes it's the property management company that might be in charge of it. Sometimes it's an individual owner, an individual real estate company. There's all sorts of options. It's best if you can try to talk to whoever actually manages or owns it, because they're going to be the ones that you can actually explain why you want to set up your tent there and et cetera.
Gotcha. So once you figure out the right person to talk to and you're now speaking about the location, do you throw an offer out to them, or do you let them make a proposal to you?
And this would kind of depend on how many sales skills you have and how comfortable you are talking with people. But honestly, I try to come out with the proposal myself first. I've always tried to have some kind of either an amount that I've already known that I want to pay, or a certain percentage that you want to give off. Or
Right.
I've also had locations where we've worked it in where we don't pay anything and we just give them free windshield repairs. So I try to come up with the offer first, but there has been many times where they've already kind of had their deal ready too. So it kind of depends on if you're getting the first punch or not.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And when picking the location, and how much consideration do you give to your competitors in the area?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's It's funny because I find the locations we've had throughout the years that were closer to a lot of our competitors were actually a lot busier than the ones that weren't.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that's just a direct correlation. If you're closer to your competitors, it helps. I don't know if it was just randomly by some of the locations, but throughout the past, I've always tried to kind of see where they are set up around the city and kind of see where their areas are that they're kind of hitting. And, typically they've done enough research that you can kind of go with whatever they've done and try to stay around them. You don't have to be right beside them, but
Right.
somewhere close to them because you just never know.
Got you. And so how many locations do you analyze before choosing one?
Oh, you know what? I've always kept to my system of having three good locations and
Hmm.
then dwindling it down to the one that you want.
Right.
Because sometimes what'll happen is people get greedy, or maybe they want certain kind of insurance. Things can always change. So it's always good to have those kind of two backup locations just in case one of them doesn't work out. And that way you feel comfortable with either one of the three that you've kind of already picked out anyways.
Got you. And when paying the fees for your location, do you pay weekly, daily, monthly, or a percentage of your revenue? How does that work?
Um, yeah, typically in the past we've tried to have it either a monthly lease for the season, so
Hmm.
for the summertime. There has been a few places that we've done either a percentage throughout the summer and kind of given them a certain percentage that we agreed upon before the season.
Right.
And there's been a few locations where we've just gotten really lucky and they've honestly just asked us to be really nice and clean and just kind of help them out when they get windshield chips. So it kind
Gotcha.
of depends, but I would say typically you're looking at a monthly lease.
Gotcha. And on average, how many vehicles do you inspect per day?
Ooh, I would say if you got a busy location and it's got lots of traffic going through and it's a nice sunny day, you could expect anywhere from 15 to 20 cars at least.
15 to 20 cars, and that's completed rock chips, or 15 to 20 total cars that you just see?
That would kind of depend because I find some days you get a lot where they're kind of already crackouts, or
Hmm.
you'll get a lot of chips that are just way too big, or you'll get people stopping by for little chips that aren't really something you want to put through.
Right.
So I would say on a good day, if you're getting everyone through, yeah, you could at least get 10 or 15 on a really busy location.
Gotcha. And what's the minimum, say the minimum average of repairs you need to do daily to consider your location successful?
Hmm, good question. This would definitely depend on how much you're charging customers and how much you're paying for your location and all that. But I typically like to make a good $300 is my goal every day.
Got you.
And I think that way, at least you can pay for somebody being at the location if it's not going to be you, or if anything comes up, you just know you have a little bit extra cash in case anything happens. So I would
That's,
at least shoot for, yeah, 200 or 300 a day.
that makes sense. That's what's up. Next question is, what's your average charge for a rock chip?
It's funny. So in Manitoba, it's actually ran through the insurance company.
Okay.
So they actually charge quite a bit. And typically, if it's just one chip, you're looking at about $90 plus taxes. And then it goes up for however many stone chips that you might have on that vehicle. But that's all done through the insurance
Through the
company.
insurance.
So technically, the customer wouldn't pay it. But yeah.
Right. And so what's the percentage of insurance versus cash jobs that you do?
In Manitoba, I would say 98% of the time it's through the insurance company because typically out there, most people are covered with the deductibles that they have out there. So
Right.
very rarely are you doing cash repairs.
Gotcha. And if you do cash, when determining your cash price, how did you determine your cash price?
That's actually a really good one too, and that goes back to looking at your competitors.
Hmm.
If you just kind of phone them up and you kind of ask in a way that just pretend that you're a regular customer and
Hmm.
ask them how much they charge for a rock chip or multiple or blah blah blah. And I kind of did that a few times, and you kind of find out what other people are charging, and you can kind of base yourself there. Whether you want to be a little bit higher or at the same price or a little bit cheaper, that's totally up to you. But you definitely
Gotcha.
want to provide quality and value, and that's how I find my prices.
Gotcha. So are you compared to your competitors, are you higher or lower than most of your competition?
For most of my competition, I'm a tad higher. Not by much, but there's definitely some that are a little bit cheaper than I am. But for the most part, we're just a little bit higher than the most competition.
Gotcha. And do you have any employees working for you?
At the peak, we had about 4 employees running 4 tents for us.
Hmm. And how do you
Right
compensate?
now,
Okay.
oh, never mind. Never mind. Right now, I don't.
Okay,
But
cool. So 4 employees, how do you compensate those 4 employees?
So this was kind of inspired from the other company that I worked for as well. But I basically just did hourly plus commission, and the way we would run it is for every $100 in revenue, you'd get an extra dollar per commission. So very similar to another company that I worked for.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And so, I know you say you may be looking to get more locations. Do you have plans to add from your 4 employees, or you got any growth plan going right
Yeah,
now?
you know, it kind of depends on what locations you can kind of find and how much they are, and you know, it's always in the back of my mind. It's something you're always looking for, especially once you start to do the tent business model and you start to see how profitable they can be, and especially if you have the right location. I'd have to say my mind's always looking for the one number one spot, but
Gotcha. And so, with your tent locations, jumping into just tent questions now, what size tent do you guys use?
Oh, so that's a really good question. So I did a lot of research in the beginning, and I found that the best company that I've gone with is Impact Canopy. I believe they're in Canada and the U.S.
Right.
But they seem to have the best quality tents. You can get custom valances, you can get custom sidewalls. Like, they have a pretty good selection of everything, and I've never had any problems with them. They've always shipped it out within time and stuff like that. And yeah, so I would say that's probably the company I've stuck with since I first began.
All right. So, with it being in Canada and even in the U.S., it's a lot of wind, a lot of weather factors out there. How do you secure your
Oh,
tent
yes.
so the wind doesn't damage them, or the tent doesn't fall over on the vehicle you're working on?
Well, for anyone listening, I will say that you have to go through the experience of losing a tent first.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because I've tried a lot of things. We've tried the rubber weights. We've tried tying down with rubber weights in the sandbags. And it's funny because you could have a very nice day and any little gust of wind could pick up that tent and fly it across the parking lot. So we actually ended up finding out that regular cinder blocks, the ones with the 2 holes in them, like the rectangles, they actually work if you put 3 or 4 on each leg and you tie it down to something, or either your car or a tree or something like that. We haven't had any tents fly away since. So that's my best bet.
Gotcha. And so, at the end of the shift, do you leave your tent up, or do you put it up every time you start working?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't leave it out there. I just don't trust the weather or don't trust other people. But yeah, we just pack it up and throw it in the car and bring it for the next day.
Gotcha. And I know you already got a couple of photos of your tents up, but if you could share a couple of photos with me so we can share it with people so they can actually see the actual setup and actually make a whole lot more sense to them.
For sure, I'd love to.
Got it. And now the repair part of the questions. When doing a repair, you set up for the day at the location. How many bridges do you have per location? So one tent, how many bridges and how many curing lights?
Good question. So I try to have every location with 4 bridges and 2 UV lights.
Gotcha.
Just because you just never know. You might get a car with 4 or 5 chips. You might get 2 cars at the same time. So I found at least having 4 bridges around tends to be enough to kind of help out. By all means, if you got more laying around, throw them in there too. But I would say minimum 4 bridges and 2 UV lights per location.
Gotcha. And other than your windshield repair equipment and tools, do you consider any other items essential, like ladders, tables, chairs, or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. So you're definitely going to want to get a step ladder or some kind of ladder that you can get up to the bigger trucks and what like that. Definitely need a table, any kind of signage that you want. I think for a lot of tents, it definitely helps having the sidewalls.
Yep.
And that way, at least you can kind of put up your prices or what you do or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say you definitely need a chair for anyone that's going to be coming by. The customers might want to sit around and chat with you while you're working and whatnot. And then anything small that you can think of. Some people like to have music. Some people, they bring books. They bring all sorts of stuff. Just keep yourself busy. So anything you can think of that way.
Gotcha. And when at your location, if you're processing your payments and stuff like that, is it any special software or hardware you guys use?
So up in Canada, we've been using Square for a while.
Okay.
So they actually have pretty accessible POS system, and everything's through your phone, and it's all on a Bluetooth little machine. So we've been using them for a while and haven't had any problems.
Okay, that's what's up. That makes sense. And so now you're at your location. You got everything all set up. Your signage out. You're sitting out and about. Customer pulls up. How do you approach the potential customer, and how do you put them at ease to allow them to convince them that you're the right guy to do the windshield repair?
Oh, good question. I think a lot of this has to do with your confidence and the way you present yourself, especially if you're looking professional. You got a nice T-shirt or hat or something like that. A big smile. That's probably the first thing you want to do is smile at them, wave, say hi. They're probably going to get out of their car right away and show you the chip.
Right.
And then that's when you want to kind of explain your expertise, tell them what they have. They have a damaged, area on their windshield. You need to explain to them what needs to happen, what can happen if they don't fix it, etc. Typically, if you're good at explaining the process in a simple way and you make it easy for them to understand, I would say most of the time you're going to close the sale, because at the end of the day, they kind of need that done anyways. Most people know that it's going to spread out and get worse. So if they're driving up to your tent, for the most part, they're probably going to use you. They just want to make sure that they're using the right person. And that's where your confidence comes in, and just knowing that you do good repairs and explaining everything properly and simply. And I find typically you'll close the sale.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're right, spot on with a smile, like make eye contact, smile, greet people. That go a long ways
Exactly.
with people.
Yep.
That's leads into the next question. I would say that's one of the three things that sets you apart is smiling and making eye contact and greeting people. But what are the top three
Mm-hmm.
things you feel that sets you apart from your competition?
And something that we pride ourselves in and have for a long time is customer service. And
Right.
that goes back to smiling, waving. Just treat the customer like you'd want to be treated at any other location or service or something like that. That goes a long way, and a lot of times if you're giving people good customer service, they'll go out of their way to tell people that they had a great service, or they'll go online and write you a review, or, there's just so many potential ways that can add and snowball. So I think that's number one, is you just have to really treat the customer properly and make them feel like they've made a good choice in choosing you that day.
Right.
And then the other two would be quality workmanship. If you did a good job and you feel really good that they can drive away and they're not going to be upset about your work, that goes a long way as well. And same thing, they'll start telling people and friends and all that. And then, a lot of it has to do with your pricing. I think there's a lot of people in some cities that kind of price themselves really cheaply, and that kind of doesn't help a lot of the professionals that are trying to,
Right.
And I guess that all depends on the area too, because some of them your pricing won't matter because you're doing insurance claims. But
Right.
I would say top two for sure is customer service, and then just doing a quality job.
Gotcha. And then the next question is, what are the biggest challenges you face when setting up a new tent location?
That's a great question. Your first biggest challenge is going to be getting new customers.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to set up your tent, but it's another thing to have people actually stopping by.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where a big friendly smile or a wave of people are kind of looking at you when they're driving by, or maybe throwing around a ball or kicking a hacky sack, or just making it look like there's somebody there waiting to help you out. Typically will get people looking, and that's what you want. You want to set up this tent, and you want this tent to be busy, right? So the more people that you have stopping by, the more customers you have, the more other people are going to stop by.
Right.
Another challenge is you really got to look out for your exposure of where your tent is. I've seen this before with other companies where they'll have a really good retail spot, but they didn't pick a good spot for where they actually want their tent situated.
Right.
And that's a big deal, because you want people to see you when they're driving in and out. You want people to see you when they're driving by. Maybe they're at the gas station, stopping to get gas. They see you across the street. So I would say exposure is another big one, that you have to really make sure people can see your tent from all sorts of different areas.
Right.
And then the other one is look professional. I think that's another big one, is a lot of these tents, you don't have to spend much, but you got to spend a little bit to make sure you look like a professional technician that's ready to help people and fix their windshields.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So you got the exposure, you get the people over, and now that they're over and you're finna you put them at ease. Now you're doing the repair. Can you kind of describe in detail what you do from the point of the customer giving you the approval to when you hand them the keys back? So like your whole process of the repair and what all you do, or what do you say to them? Or
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's say they're down, they want to get the repair done right away. And, sometimes it depends on your location. Some of them might walk away and go shopping. Some of them want to stick around. I kind of like it when they stick around, because that gives you the opportunity to kind of explain everything. So I typically kind of walk the customer through the process. I'll explain what I'm doing in very simple terms. I'll answer any questions that they might have. Sometimes they want to look at what you're doing, or they'll ask you what your drill is for. So just kind of explain to them in the easiest way possible what you're doing, because at the end of the day, you are a random stranger who's touching their windshield. So you do want to make sure that you have that confidence and kind of explain to them everything you're doing. And then usually after that, they just want to chat. So I like to be friendly and just, strike up small conversations. You can ask general questions. Typically, if they had a good conversation with you, they're going to feel at the end of it like they were talking to a friend, not just a random stranger. And that goes a long ways because that eventually will lead to them, once again, telling more people about your business and et cetera and et cetera.
Got you. Makes sense. And before doing repairs, or since you have been doing it, have you completed any windshield repair or sales training?
Before what?
I said, so since you've been in the industry, have you received or completed any windshield repair or sales training?
Yeah. So funny story. You actually trained me back in 2012.
Yeah. So how valuable did you find that training?
You know what? It's super funny because I still think of the little things that I learned back then in 2012 that I still know today. And then there's things that I've taken from that training and taught my employees. So I'd have to say it's really worth it. And I'm very thankful that I got to have a little bit of training instead of just walking in not knowing anything. So yeah, no, training is good. It's just a lot of this has to do with practice too. If you just go out there and you haven't done one repair before, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to sell that confidence. But if you've practiced enough and you know that you do good repairs, the sky's the limit.
Gotcha. That makes sense, man. And appreciate those kind words about our training class. It's a
Oh,
lot of
no
things.
worries.
It's a lot of things people learn in it. It's the small things they take away from it that we say that helps them. But it's really
For
good
sure.
to hear, things you learned, 7 years ago that you're still using, applying, and got your employees actually doing. So that's actually what's up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So next question, getting to the last little bit of them here. What are the biggest mistakes you see that windshield repair technicians make?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say after a few years of doing this and you kind of learn the ropes and you kind of get a feel for everything, the thing I see the most is technicians either rushing repairs or forgetting a step or two. Mm-hmm. And that typically ends up with a failed repair or a customer not being happy or them assuming it wasn't done properly, and that kind of just goes further and further. So I would say the worst thing I've seen is a repair that doesn't have a pit covered, or they kind of drilled into one spot, but they never actually finished the rest, so a lot of it's just rushing. And I think if you just take your time and make sure you do good repair, that'll go a long way.
Gotcha. So taking your time. So that leads into the next one. If you could offer one piece of advice to someone starting out, taking your time is key, but any other pieces of advice you could give someone that's starting out in the industry?
I would say the number one thing is practice until you know that you can produce quality repairs. So whether that's 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000, but you got to make sure that you're doing quality repairs when you first get out there.
Yep, practice makes perfect. That's really
exactly
true, man. And it's all because what we do in windshield repair is repetition. And so with the repetition, if you practice, you get it down pat. And I tell people not only practice, but actually tell yourself what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that just goes with the whole practice piece. So when on the spot, you're ready to perform at any given point in time. You can perform it, and 2, you can explain what you're performing. So that is a key piece of advice.
Exactly it.
Yep.
I love it.
Yep. And in addition to your tent and your location, how do you advertise your business?
Oh, that's a great question too. It's a little bit of everything. Obviously, the tent does a good bit of advertising itself. If you got a nice, good color and your tent's up there and people are seeing it, that's really big right off the bat. Another thing is being online. So like social media, Google My Business. If you got in the website, make sure you got that going. Any local business directories, stuff like that. And then a lot of it is face-to-face, whether you take a quick walk around the park and try to give people some flyers, or whether you're doing your own flyering, before you go out to the tent, or meeting people face-to-face at a car show or something like that. Like, just always have that kind of in the back of your mind and always have cards on you and flyers ready. And I think that'll help with everything else as well.
Gotcha. And so when finishing a repair, how do you solicit testimonials from your customers?
Oh, that's another good one. You know what? It's funny when you're first starting out, if you're telling people you're a small business and, you do a good job, you give them that customer service and whatnot, typically you can either ask or they're just going to do it on their own. But if you feel comfortable enough, tell them like, hey, this is my new business. I'm just starting, and I'd really appreciate it if you would give me either a Google review or a Yelp review or Facebook recommendation, whatever is easiest for you. I definitely try to go for the Google reviews just because a lot of people use Google. Yep. It looks good on your Google business. So if you can ask them nicely, if you enjoyed the service, would you mind writing a review? That's always one. And there's been a lot of times where you just give such great service that you don't even have to ask, and they'll go do it themselves.
Gotcha. That makes sense, man. Hey, kill them with a great performance. And once you do a great job, they typically will say something for you. But hey, at the same time, a closed mouth don't get fed. So if you got to solicit it, hey, do what you got to do, because that's what you're trying to do, is let the world know you do good work. And I appreciate that little bit of advice that you gave there. When trying to get customers to revisit you or to refer others, do you offer any incentives to customers?
It's funny. We've always kind of offered people. We had this little card. It's called a lifetime customer care card, and it's just kind of do your own logo and whatnot. And there's just a little spot for somebody to write on it, and you just write their name and you give that to them at the end, and it just says that they're entitled to preferred discounts. And then typically when I'm giving them that, I also say, hey, and if you also know anybody else that could benefit from this service, by all means, if you send them our way, we have no problem sending you a discount or stuff like that. Typically people are more than, if they enjoyed the service, they don't even want a discount. They just want to tell everybody. But it's also good to have those kind of little incentives to give people a reason to tell their friends as well.
That's what's up. That makes sense, man. Hey, if you do a good job, people will refer you, because the best business card is word of mouth. So, hey, do a good job.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it goes
for
back
sure.
to what you said immediately. People are willing to recommend you when they know, one, you present well, two, you actually have a great personality and you know how to treat people well, offering great customer service. So all those things go hand in hand to getting the testimonial later on. So appreciate you reinforcing that. Last three questions here. What are your financial goals for your business, or do you have any?
Oh, that's a great question. When I first started out, it was I was pretty young, and I'd have to say financial goals was to just make as much money as possible. But it's definitely changed once you get older. And right now, I just want to build a business that I can, provide for me and my family in the future. And that's kind of where I'm going. And that's why I try to provide value to people. So I'd say financially wise, I just want to be financially free within the next 5 to 10 years.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So other than your goals, or do you have any motivation or anything to like make your business successful, like work close to home, have a better work-life balance?
Yeah, and there's that's a great question as well, because that's a big factor in this business is working for yourself. You get to pick your own hours, you get to work when you want to work, you get to do what you want to do, and that's the nice thing too is you get what you put into it. So if you're not putting that much into it, you're not going to get much out of it. But if you're constantly trying to bump up this business and tell people about your great service and stuff like that, I find that you tend to see all the rewards come in a lot faster, and that's something that kind of made me stick with working for myself is, you just get so much more freedom owning your own business. Yeah. By all means, there's a lot of stress being an entrepreneur, but at the same time, you really get to enjoy your life a little bit more, in my opinion.
Yeah, now that makes sense. Yeah, you got to, and again, your goals, your motivation is for you. That's kind of like a one of one. Like that's for you. It's by you and for you. So, I always tell people, figure out what works for you. Just because, everyone heard everything you just said doesn't mean that it's going to work for them or that it's for them. You have to always figure out what's for you and put yourself in the best situation so you can succeed. So, again, that's you reinforcing what we always tell people, and it's always good to hear other people feel and think the same way. And last question for you: is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't already covered?
You know what? I feel like we've covered quite a bit. The only thing I can say is like if you're willing to put in a lot of work and effort and blood, sweat, and tears and whatever else you want to say, like this windshield repair business, it's all what you make it, and if you want to be successful and you expect that you're going to be successful, you will. And I think that's it goes with any company. I just find I really fell in love with the windshield repair industry, and if you do too, I find you'll find your own success in it as well.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. I really appreciate you saying that because it ain't work if you're having fun with it, and you do what works for you, and always try to reinvent yourself, try to stay relevant, keep yourself out there, and and do your thing, man, and just, go for it. You know what you get if you don't do anything. So always be
Yep,
willing to try.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
I agree with that 100%.
yeah, so we really truly appreciate your time and you giving this insight to help others. I'm sure it's gonna be very, very valuable for them. And once again, we
Oh,
appreciate
for
you and your
sure.
time, Zach.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate the call.
All right, no problem, man. You take care.